all mankind as of today. It's going to change rapidly.
Grok AI just processed decades of global economic data. We're talking IMF reports, World Bank databases, central bank records, debt figures, demographic projections, the same information that governments use to make trillion-dollar decisions. And what it found about the future is genuinely alarming.
This is the latest artificial intelligence system. This is a moment that demands everyone's full attention.
Here's the deal. The AI identified 5 major economic forces converging at the same time. Global debt racing toward the highest levels since World War II. Populations aging so fast that some countries will have more retirees than workers within decades. Supply chains fracturing across continents. Productivity gains from AI that might not arrive fast enough to save us. And a global economy that isn't collapsing, but is splitting apart in ways we haven't seen in generations. And get this, none of this is speculation. None of this is doom or fantasy. These are patterns extracted from publicly available data that most people never bother to look at. The numbers are there. They've always been there. The AI just connected them in ways human analysts struggle to do. It saw what's hiding in plain sight. So in this video, I'm going to break down exactly what Grok found when it analyzed the global economy, what the data actually says about debt, demographics, AI, and trade, why experts at the IMF and World Bank are issuing warnings that should concern everyone watching this, and most importantly, what this means for the next decade of your life. Let's get into it. The data set. First, let's be clear about what global economic data actually means. We're not talking about secret files or classified intelligence. This is publicly available information from the most authoritative sources on the planet: the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the OECD, central banks like the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, and the Bank of Japan, national statistics agencies from nearly every country on Earth. And, get this, it's the exact same data that hedge funds pay millions to analyze. The same numbers that shape policy decisions affecting 8 billion people, GDP growth rates, inflation metrics, debt levels that would make your stomach turn, interest rates, trade flows, demographic shifts reshaping entire continents, productivity figures, energy markets, commodity prices. Here's the catch. Humans can process maybe 5 or 6 of these variables at once. AI can analyze all of them simultaneously. It finds correlations that would take economists years to identify. It maps scenarios that human minds literally cannot hold at the same time. Basically, when you connect all those dots at once, the picture that emerges explains why the IMF's top economists are choosing their words very carefully right now. The fracturing economy. Here's the first major finding. The global economy isn't collapsing. Global GDP continues to grow. The IMF's October 2025 World Economic Outlook projects 3.2% growth for 2025 and 3.1% for 2026. But it's not that simple, though. Pierre-Olivier Gourinchas, the IMF's chief economist, delivered the October update in terms that made the press room go quiet. Global prospects remain dim, risks tilted to the downside. The world is adjusting to a landscape marked by greater protectionism and fragmentation. Let that sink in. The IMF's top economist isn't celebrating, he's warning. And get this, the data shows growth is diverging at an accelerating rate. Advanced economies like America, Europe, and Japan growing at 1.5 to 2%. Slow, aging, buried under debt. Emerging markets, faster growth but volatile and unpredictable. Low-income countries, many are already in debt distress and climate vulnerable. This is where it gets unsettling. Growth isn't unifying the world anymore, it's splitting it apart. Some regions surge, Others fall behind. The gap widens every single year. The shock isn't collapse. The shock is divergence. A fracturing global economy where the rules that worked for 50 years are breaking down. But diverging growth is just the symptom. The disease? It's sitting in a number so large, most economists refuse to say it out loud. The debt crisis. 235% of world GDP. Let that number sit. That's over $251 trillion in total global debt. And it's climbing. When the AI analyzed debt variables, one pattern dominated everything else. Not inflation, not growth, debt. Total debt, public and private combined, sitting at levels that haven't been seen in modern economic history. Here's the deal. According to the IMF's Global Debt Database, public debt alone is projected to rise above 100% of global GDP by 2029. If that happens, it marks the highest level since 1948. The highest debt burden since the aftermath of World War II. Vitor Gaspar, the IMF's Director of Fiscal Affairs, stood before the press in October 2025 and delivered a warning that made seasoned economists shift in their seats. Public debt risks are widespread, tilted toward debt accumulating even faster. Policymakers must act now, and get this. For years, rising debt wasn't a crisis. Between the global financial crisis and the pandemic, interest rates kept falling. Countries could borrow more because servicing that debt was almost free. That era is over, gone, finished. Interest rates have surged. The IMF reports government interest spending will hit 2.9% of GDP in 2025, up from 2% in 2020, and it keeps rising through the decade. Every percentage point of rate increase means billions more in debt payments, money that can't fund infrastructure, healthcare, crisis response. Here's the catch. About a third of all countries, accounting for 80% of global GDP, now have public debt that's both higher than pre-pandemic levels and rising faster. This isn't one country mismanaging books. This is systemic, and that's putting it lightly. 23 countries now borrow more than their entire GDP produces annually. 2 countries owe more than double their economic output. High debt constrains everything, but there's a force multiplier that makes it all worse, and it's already locked in. The demographic time bomb. This finding made analysts go silent, because unlike debt or trade wars, this one cannot be fixed with policy. It cannot be legislated away. It cannot be reversed with stimulus. It's already baked into the system, locked in. Demographics. Japan is ground zero. Nearly a third of Japanese citizens are now 65 or older. The oldest population in human history. The average farmer in Japan is 70 years old. A third of construction workers are over 55. The population has declined for 14 consecutive years. But here's the deal. Japan isn't an outlier anymore. Japan is the preview of what's coming everywhere. The OECD Employment Outlook 2025 projects that by 2060, the old age dependency ratio will exceed 75% in Italy, Japan, Poland, Spain, and Korea. Basically, for every 100 working age adults, 75 or more dependents need support. And get this. In Korea, by 2060, UN projections suggest the overall dependency ratio will surpass 100%. More dependents than workers. Let that sink in. The OECD projects working age population across member countries will decline 8% between 2023 and 2060. But in more than a quarter of OECD countries, including China, Eastern Europe, and parts of ASTHO, decline exceeds 30%. Some countries lose nearly half their workforce. This is where analysts started sweating. Pension systems designed for different population pyramids. Healthcare overwhelmed by aging populations. Shrinking workforces struggling to maintain output. Tax bases collapsing under retiree weight. Japan already faces a projected shortfall of 11 million workers by 2040. 11 million, and they're furthest along this curve. Everyone else follows. Without major policy changes, this demographic shift drags down growth for decades, unless one technology can save us. And that's where the data gets genuinely terrifying. The AI productivity paradox. You'd think AI solves everything: declining workers, automate, falling productivity, let machines compensate, problem solved. It's not that simple, though. When you analyze the productivity data, a strange pattern emerges. One that split the expert community down the middle. Here's the catch. Productivity growth has been weak across advanced economies for decades. AI is supposed to fix that, but historical data shows transformative technologies often take years, sometimes decades, to show measurable gains. Computers were everywhere by the 1980s. The productivity boom didn't hit until the late 1990s. The OECD projects labor productivity in G7 economies could grow 0.4 to 1.3% annually over the next decade from AI. Goldman Sachs projects 1.5% annually for the US. But economist Daron Acemoglu at MIT has cautioned gains may be modest once you account for harder, context-dependent tasks AI still struggles with. And get this, an IMF working paper from April 2025 made the research community go quiet. AI's productivity impact in advanced economies could be more than double that in low-income countries. The gap between winners and losers doesn't close, it widens. Basically, countries with infrastructure, education, and capital capture the gains. Everyone else falls further behind. The data screams one message: optimism doesn't guarantee outcomes. Institutional adoption, workforce training, regulatory frameworks, educational investment, these matter as much as the technology itself, maybe more. And while economists debate productivity timelines, something else reshapes the global economy in real time. Something most people haven't fully processed yet. The supply chain revolution. The pandemic broke something that can't be unbroken. For decades, global supply chains optimized for cost, cheapest production, longest shipping routes, most efficient just-in-time delivery. It worked brilliantly until it didn't. Here's the deal. McKinsey's 2025 Supply Chain Risk Survey found 82% of companies report supply chains affected by tariffs and trade disruptions. 82%. That's structural transformation. And get this, 45% of companies facing tariff impacts are increasing inventories, 39% pursuing dual sourcing, 33% developing nearshoring or reshoring plans. The entire philosophy of global trade is shifting. A 2025 Deloitte study predicted 40% of US companies would relocate part of their supply chains to North America by 2026. Apple reportedly plans moving 15 to 20% of production to India and Vietnam. Ford pivots to Mexican suppliers. This is where it gets unsettling. This shift raises costs short-term. Consumers pay more. Companies spend billions on redundant capacity. But here's the catch. Systemic risk drops. After watching supply chains collapse during COVID, companies decided resilience beats efficiency. Every time. The numbers paint a picture most aren't ready to see. Globalization as we knew it is fragmenting, regionalizing. The rules governing trade for 50 years are being rewritten now. But there's something the analysis doesn't find, and this might be most important. What AI doesn't predict. Let's be clear about something critical. When running all this data through AI, here's what it doesn't find. Exact crash dates, singular catastrophic events, a specific moment everything falls apart. Anyone claiming AI predicts those things is lying. Here's the deal. The analysis reveals pressures, probabilities, trade-offs, scenarios where stress points converge. But economic outcomes depend on countless variables: policy decisions, political shifts, black swan events that no model predicts with precision. The data reveals patterns, not prophecies. And that brings us to the real finding, the one that should keep you up tonight. The real shock. Here's where it lands. The future isn't written in the numbers. It's written in how societies respond to them, how governments act, how institutions adapt, how quickly we move. The data shows outcomes depend heavily on choices, policy decisions, institutional reform, investment in productivity, education, infrastructure. Paths diverge dramatically based on what happens next. Countries implementing credible fiscal adjustments can stabilize debt. Nations investing in AI and workforce training can capture productivity gains. Economies reforming pensions and encouraging labor participation can soften demographic decline. The IMF's recommendation hits like a warning. Policymakers must act now. Fiscal policy must anchor confidence and stability. Basically, the shock isn't what AI found in the data. The shock is that we've known most of this all along: the debt accumulation, the demographic cliffs, the supply chain vulnerabilities. These trends have been building for years, for decades. The analysis just makes ignoring them impossible now. And get this, the window for action narrows every year. Delay makes adjustments harder, more painful, more disruptive. The data keeps talking. The question is whether anyone's listening. So, here's the question that should keep you up tonight. If the debt can't hold and the demographics can't change, what happens when the next crisis hits and governments have nothing left to spend? Are we watching the slow unwinding of everything built since 1945? Or is this just fear dressed up in spreadsheets? The data doesn't give us easy answers, but it does give us warnings, and those warnings are getting louder. Drop your take in the comments. I want to know what you think. And if this changed how you see the next decade, smash that subscribe button. Because the data keeps talking, and you need to hear what it says next.